Marketing to mums. That's what we're talking about on the podcast today. And I've got an amazing guest for you to listen to. But just a couple of stats to wet your whistle. If mums were an industry, they would be the largest contributor to GDP. There are 6.2 million mothers in Australia, and we control about $132 billion in annual spending. If that's not enough to wet your whistle and thinking about how you can market better to mums, then I don't know what is. But hey, come and have a listen to Katrina McCarter and me as we talk all about marketing to mums. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small,
Well, hey there. Welcome to episode 121 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. As you can tell, I'm a little bit excited about today's episode. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making me one of them. If you're a first-time listener, then hey, welcome to you. Otherwise, welcome back. I'm Jen, the host, marketing thought leader, digital strategist, and coach for small businesses. And really, I just want one thing for you guys, and that is for you to make marketing a priority, because it's not a sometimes activity. It needs to be a priority in your business, because if you want to grow, you need to learn how to market yourself. It's not simple, I know, and perhaps it's not easy, but it should be simpler. And that's why we have a podcast called Small Business Made Simple. Just before we head into this week's episode, I just really want to quickly say that I'm now offering sponsorship for my podcast. Yay! You can now sponsor my podcast. So if you want to get your product or your service or your business or your message in front of about 1,000 small business owners every single week, then how about you think about sponsoring my podcast? You can go and read all the stats that I've got out there and all the packages that I have on my website. Just go to socialmediaandmarketing.com.au, find the podcast tab and see sponsor a podcast. I'll be starting my sponsorships in May, and I'm super excited for the people that have already jumped on board. If it sounds like you, then, or if you've never sponsored a podcast before, then feel free to reach out. Let's have a chat. Let's see where we land. And anyway, it might be the best marketing decision you make. But let's get into today's episode. I have a cracker for you. I mean, if you are just going to love it so much. My guest is Katrina McCarter, and she is Marketing to Mums. That's the name of her business. And if you don't know Katrina, in about 40 minutes, you are not going to be able to forget her. She's a wealth of knowledge, a statistic lover. I hope I said that right. A statistic lover. A bit like me, but even more. And she's all about marketing to mums. I have to say, as a 46-year-old with 3 adult children, my children being 21, 18 and 17, I often feel invisible from big corporate marketing. I see marketing for those above me and for those below me, but I don't really see much marketing invested in, well, what Katrina will say, the invisible mums, which apparently I fall into that category. I'm always looking at these things from a marketing point of view, but this conversation, I was so interested in both putting my marketer hat on and my business hat on and even my consumer hat on. It was just so exciting. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited. So go and grab a cuppa and listen in to Katrina. You won't be able to stop thinking about some of the things that she mentions in this podcast. Katrina, I'm excited to have a bit of a chat to you today because we're talking about marketing to mums and why that perhaps is a little bit different. But for those of my audience who don't know and love Katrina McCarter just yet, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Oh, first up, Jen, thank you so much for having me along. I've been really, really looking forward to this interview and having a chat with you. I guess for those that don't know me, I'm a marketing strategist. I'm a two-time author. I'm a speaker, and I am a coach and board advisor. And I run a business called Marketing to Mums, and that's actually a marketing consultancy. And I'm based in Melbourne, and I basically work with businesses and business owners to help them attract more mothers and their families to their business.
So, I guess mothers is such a broad term. And I think a little while ago when we first discussed this, I remember talking about the fact that, in mums groups and that on Facebook, sometimes I feel a little bit odd because my youngest is 17, but I'm still a mum. But I feel a lot of marketing is sort of focused towards the young mums. So, when you say marketing to mums, are you covering the breadth of who mums are? Or is there a particular focus that you feel there's a demographic or an age group to focus on?
Oh, such a good question, Jen. I am talking about all mothers, anyone who has given birth to life. So I cover the vast, diverse differences of mothers. So here in Australia, just to give you some context, we've got 6.2 million mothers. Every year, about 140,000 women become mothers for the first time. Now, collectively, these women control an absolutely staggering $132 billion of spending every year. So, and that's every single year. And one of the research companies, Global Data Insights, actually gives us some perspective to say that if mums were an industry, they would actually be our largest contributor to GDP. So we actually power this economy, but we are so diverse and different. And you're right, a lot of the time brands just focus in on mums as being, new mums with young children, but the opportunity is far greater than that. There are a huge number of sub-segments of the mum market, and that's actually a lot of the work that I do. I undertake a lot of research into different areas or different segments of mothers, and I educate brands about just understanding their behaviours and their preferences and their motivations. So, yeah, in my last book, which was The Mother of All Opportunities, I talk about, there are 8 kind of real opportunities I see over the next decade in the mum market in certain subsegments. And one of those is a segment I call the invisible women. And they're those women over 40 that you actually don't see in advertising. They often control 3 generations of spend because they've still got dependent children living at home. They are now actually helping their elderly parents with health concerns, etc. And they might be controlling all those 3 generations of spend. So they're incredibly powerful. And the key message we get through from our research we do at Marketing to Mums is they are the most dissatisfied segment of mothers in Australia. They feel the most overlooked, the most undervalued. And they say we feel invisible. So there's a real opportunity in that segment, and that's just an example of one segment of the mother market here in Australia.
Yeah, and look, I would say that's the category I fall into. I'm 46, and certainly, certainly controlling, at least 2 sets of those, and certainly looking down the barrel of that 3rd set. So what brought you to this? Like, was there a particular bump in the road or a particular story or something that happened to you where you've just gone, all right, this needs to change, and I'm the person who's going to make it change?
I love that. Well, Jen, a little bit of my background. I've got like 20 years sales and marketing experience. I went off and did a marketing degree, and my corporate experience was always looking at the mother market because I was working in the grocery industry. So I led Arnott's Biscuit sales teams. I ran major supermarket accounts for one of the Mars businesses. So my focus has always been around mum as the shopper. So that's kind of some context. But my real learnings about mums came, when I became a mum myself, and I launched my first business, and that was back in 2011, and that was an online shopping website for mums that I grew to a community of 150,000 mums across Australia. And what became so evident to me is that they were really dissatisfied with the way businesses and brands were speaking to them. As part of my website, we would promote other businesses and their sales. And I would receive this copy from brands and businesses. It didn't matter how big they were or how small they were. I would just go, this is just not going to land with my audience. And I was really surprised that they didn't understand mothers and how we like to communicate and how we like to be spoken to. And so I did a research project, and that was 2016. And I expected to get, 300 or 400 mums to share some of their views with me. I got it staggering. We had over 1,800 responses.
Wow.
And what our key finding was that 63% of them said brands and businesses don't understand me. And I went, wow, there is clearly a gap in the market here. And that led me to jump in and launch Marketing to Mums. And so my aim is for mothers not to receive just so much noise and push sales messages, and at the same time really help businesses better understand mothers as consumers and all the different kinds of mothers, and so that they can better tailor their communications and their marketing strategies so that they can drive their sales and profit. And it really is a win-win for both mothers and for brands.
It's so interesting that stat that you just said, because quite often, in presentations and when I'm talking to small business owners, we talk about why customers leave. And, lots of people think it is because they're dissatisfied with, customer service or something like that, which I think the research that's done, that's only like 9%. 68% of people will leave a business because they feel they don't care about them, which is exactly what you're saying. Like, people are going, you don't care whether I shop here or not, so I'm just going to shop wherever I want. There's no loyalty to it. Yeah, which is just completely backing up exactly what you found as well. So I know for a fact that big business doesn't do this well, because I am a consumer and also a marketer, so perhaps look at things a little bit differently. But what about small businesses? What could they do? Because my audience listening is predominantly small business. What could they do that perhaps they could look at strategically or in their marketing, to look at that diversity and that inclusiveness of including mums?
Oh, such a good question. Look, Jen, I actually work with a lot of small business owners myself as well. So, and I am a small business owner, so I completely appreciate what you're asking of me. I think the number one thing a small business owner can do is to actually understand who their core customer is. So understand what profile they are. Are they a millennial mum or are they a Gen X mum? Like, that's really important because they have different communication preferences. And I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
I used to work with a chain of indoor play centres, and we did a survey to understand who was the profile of each venue. And we found that half their venues attracted a millennial mother and half their venues attracted a Gen X mother. Well, Gen X mothers, we know through research, are all about time efficiency and convenience. They want to get other things done. They're about multitasking. They're about getting some me time. So for those play centres that were attracting a Gen X mother, we spoke about the great Wi-Fi. We spoke about great quality coffee, comfortable couches, magazines, etc., so that mum can get that little bit of other time to do her other chores, check her phone, etc., or maybe even get some work done. But
for the audience, who's a Gen X and who's a millennium, just in case they don't quite know that distinction?
Great question. So a Gen X mother is typically aged from about 39 through to about 53 years of age, and a millennial mother is aged from somewhere about 24, 25 through to 38.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So and then for the other half of those play centres, they were attracting a millennial mum, and a millennial mum is really driven by building really strong bonds with her child It's all about the relationship. So for those venues where we spoke about the benefits of play, of having fun with your child and strengthening your bond with your child. So completely different communication styles in terms of what we might do on the social media posts or what we might do in newsletters, etc. So the first thing I would say is, without question, undertake a market research survey to understand the profile of your mother, your core customer, but also why they're choosing you. Because the key thing I talk to my clients all the time, people choose you. It's your differences that make you special. It's your differences is why, it's something that I say to my kids.
Yeah.
I love differences. We celebrate differences in our household. The kids will come home from school and say, "Oh, Mum, we've got a new kid. You'll love them. They're so different." And it is, we purchase from places not because they're the same as all the others. We purchase them because they do something different that we really like. So you have to understand, what are those 3 or 4 differences, why your customers are choosing you over everyone else in the marketplace. And they kind of become what I call your content pillars. They become your key messages that you put out through your social media, through your newsletters and things like that. So they're kind of that for me is the most important thing. And it's what I find a lot of businesses will overlook. They'll say, "Look, a market research project is too expensive," or I know my customers, and we don't need to do that. They're this, and this. And I've heard that many times before. And I will tell you, I would love to share a story. I did have a company that I worked for some time, and they were really, really reluctant to do a market research project first up to understand their profile. They said, "No, we know who drinks," it was a beverage, "we know who drinks our tea. They're a young millennial mum. They love yoga. They're all about being seen in the right cafes and the right, yoga and bar studios." And I said, "I'm just not convinced that they are. What data have you got?" "No, don't have anything. Just anecdotally speaking to customers. We know this." And I said, "Look, it took me some convincing." They agreed to invest in doing the market research. We actually found that the mother who drank their tea was actually over 40. She was typically drinking it to curb her caffeine addiction. So she was, alternating with having their tea. And she was so non-aspirational, it wasn't funny. It was, for her, it definitely wasn't about seeing in the right cafes. So we, based on that, it completely blew apart the business owner's thoughts about who their customer was. And we completely changed our communications and our marketing strategy to cater for this woman who typically was 40 and most likely over 45. And we ended up driving their online sales an increase of more than 500% over an 8-month period over the same time last year by altering our communications to better target and speak to this audience that we knew. So I would definitely say it's worthwhile understanding your core customer, and then really laser focusing in on that niche. I know that many clients are really frightened, or many small businesses are really worried about niching down on a segment of the market because they're worried that they're going to miss out on sales. My big thing, and that I've seen time and time again, is where you niche and you are far more likely to attract, engage, and convert that niche than you are if you took some broad approach. So the worst thing that I see the number one mistake I would say is people target too broadly when it comes to marketing to mums. They try and be all things to all mothers. And Jen, I'm sure you know that you are very different as a mother to the 6.2 million other mothers around Australia. It's really important that that businesses recognise that.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great tip and such a great example of showing what can happen when you do niche down, or you do start looking at your data. Like I just did a podcast just a couple of weeks ago about insights and analytics, and actually looking at them, taking time to actually analyze the data, which is why I love digital marketing so much, because there is hard data. It's no longer guessing how many people listen to the radio ad. It's actually all there, and you can't argue with it too much. You could argue a little bit, but not too much. So I think that's a really great example for my audience to hear. So thank you so much for that. What sort of trends are you seeing? What do people sort of need to recognize in the marketplace now? If their ideal customer is a mum, no matter, what age group the mum is, but what are the trends looking at that small business owners can start to look out for, and perhaps, tailor their marketing a little bit towards the trends?
Yeah, great question. I would say the top trend that every small business owner needs to know when it comes to marketing to mums is understanding the power of testimonials.
Mhm.
Just like you said before, Jen, about data and insights, I'm a complete data nerd. Everything I like to do, I like to have it to be research based. So I undertake up to 3 market research projects every year on mothers' behaviours in Australia. And what we've found consistently in 2016 and again in 2019, that the number one reason mums buy is because of a written testimonial. Okay, it's more influential than a mum to mum spoken recommendation. And being an expert in the mum field, that really has surprised me. I will say that mum to mum spoken recommendation comes in second place, but a lot of people are not aware that a written testimonial is incredibly influential. Mum doesn't need to know the person who wrote that testimonial, but she needs to feel like it's authentic, it's genuine, and it's someone just like her. So I'm very big about making sure that all my clients have got a testimonial strategy. How is it? So one of the things that I do in my market research is I find out how they discovered the business, because that gives me an insight as to where I need to direct my testimonial strategy to. So if people are finding a business through Google, I know that I need to be directing my customers to Google to leave a Google review rather than a review on Facebook.
Mhm.
Because it's going to be more valued on Google. So it's first just understanding that, but it is making sure that you have got a process in place where you are asking for a testimonial. And you need to think about, when is it in my process or in the buying exchange that my customer is at their peak level of satisfaction with my business or with my brand, and that's the time to be asking for that testimonial. So number one trend is power of testimonials. Please maximize it. It is free marketing that you can be putting out. I recommend to my clients that they should be putting out one testimonial, a minimum of once a fortnight on their social media, an absolute minimum.
So I think just with that one trend alone, you've probably made everyone feel a little bit icky. Like, oh, I have to ask for something.
Well, I could tell you one of the things that you can do, and one of the things that I do through my market research, is that I actually elicit the testimonials all in one batch on behalf of my clients at the same time. So you not only are you getting your core customer, not only are you finding out why they're choosing you over anyone else, but you're getting a stack of testimonials all in one go. So that can be, for those that feel really icky about asking for a testimonial, that's one way to solve that problem, and you really will elicit enough for a couple of years. But I do encourage that there needs to be a look at your customer journey process, so that there is something built in where you're ongoingly asking for a testimonial. So, and that is something that's free. Like, for those that have got small marketing budgets, this is a great way to really be influencing mothers and building those relationships. So that's I guess is the biggest kind of trend that I would say. There's a couple of other things that we're seeing that I think is worthy of mentioning. One is that mums are increasingly valuing convenience and time saving. So we often hear that everyone thinks, a lot of small business owners think that it's all about price.
Yeah.
It's a price game. They choose my competitor because they're cheaper. Well, I'm telling you that mums are consistently telling us, and increasingly so telling us, that convenience or time saving, they're willing to pay a premium for. So they completely see that they have got limited amounts of time and they will pay a higher price. So it's your job as a business owner is to really uncover what are those things that mums value, or my mums value in my core customer group, and how can I really promote those things. So that's important. The other things that I would mention is we are seeing that mums are increasingly wanting to support other mums in business. So they're really influenced by the fact that if the business is mum-led. So I say there, your brand story, your origin story, why you do what you do, and promoting the fact that you're a mum in business is really important. So take the time to write that brand story, and you can speak mum to mum if you are a mum-led business owner. So that's something that I would leverage and use to your advantage if you're a mum-owned business. The other thing I would say is audio is growing in popularity amongst mothers. Podcasts, we're seeing a real increase in the number of mothers that are listening to podcasts here in Australia. But also, we're also seeing a drive towards the smart speakers. So Google Home, Amazon Alexa, a lot of the younger who are millennials, who I call the tech first mums, they're a segment of mums that have emerged over the last 5 years. They're looking for a technology to solve their problem first and foremost. That's where they turn to. So they're using the smart speakers a lot. Initially, they bring them into the home for entertainment value with their children. So their kids, who are 5, who are constantly asking questions, instead of asking mum or dad, they're starting to ask Google Home now. And that can keep them really entertained. And parents love them because kids are off screens. They're actually talking to a device. So mums are increasingly loving the smart speaker because hands are free. They can do other things at the same time. But this is a trend that business needs to be aware of. And the last one that I would say is we are seeing a growing role of dads and grandmothers now in play. So a lot of households have got both parents working, and they're increasingly relying on grandparents to help out with childcare because childcare expenses are so high. This role is typically falling on grandma more than granddad. And so grandma is now getting involved in a lot of everyday buying decisions that she previously would not have. Okay. And so is dad, actually, in younger millennial families, even more so. And so this is making the path to purchase a little bit more complex for business owners that they need to be aware of, is that grandma and dad are often influencing or contributing to mum's kind of research and decision making as well. So certainly the larger the business it is, I'm talking to them about, and if they're also targeting mums with young children, I'm asking them to start to develop their grandma strategy. How are you influencing grandma?
Yeah. Wow. They're amazing trends. And really, when you think about it, it makes total sense. You can sort of see those trends for sure, but you've shown a real light on them. So thank you so much for sharing those. I'm sure that you've got all my listeners thinking now. So Katrina, just before we finish up, I guess, is there anything that perhaps we haven't touched on, any sort of advice or tips you could give the small business owner as far as, looking at their marketing to mums, or that perhaps we just haven't touched on just yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question again. We haven't really spoken about social media, and I think social media plays such a big part in
that bit out. The social media marketer didn't ask about social media.
Retake. Look, I think it would be we would be overlooking things if we didn't talk about social media. We have seen some very, very heavy use of social media by Australian mothers. This is increasing. We've been tracking it since 2016. It's something that I check in on most years. One of the big trends that I'd like to say about actually, there's two things that I'd like to say. I'm going to myth bust first up. Millennials don't actually favour Instagram over Facebook. Okay. I'm here to tell you, we've been tracking this and asking about their mum's number one favoured platform, and it doesn't matter the age of the mother. We're seeing that Facebook is their number one platform. So if you're a small business owner listening in and you only have enough resource to cover off one platform and to do it well, and your market is mothers, then I would say invest your time in Facebook and really, really invest in getting that right. The second trend that I would say the second thing I'd love to comment on about social media is the increase in interest in closed Facebook groups that are just for mums. So back in 2016, we found that 66% of Australian mums belonged to a closed face group that was just for mums. They felt safe in there. They could speak more freely. It tended to be free of advertising noise, and it was a great place for mums to do her research. So if she's looking to get a seven-seater car, she just needs to go in and ask, which seven-seater car do I need? And she's going to get hundreds of comments about what she should be looking at, and that can take out so much research time for her. So it's a really big shortcut for her. What we've seen over 3 years to 2019 is that number of mothers that are participating in closed Facebook groups has lifted from 66% to 80%. So this is both a complexity and an opportunity for small business owners. One of the key things that I hear is, well, I'm a brand, I'm a business. I can't get in there and just start commenting as my business. And you're right, you can't. That's inappropriate. But at the same time, what you can do is potentially make an approach to the administrator of that closed Facebook group and see if there's a way that you can more authentically communicate through your message and engage them almost like you might engage an influencer. Mm-hmm. And often I'm engaged by businesses and sometimes other marketing agencies that will engage me to shortlist and provide them with a list of some closed Facebook groups that they could look at for their business to approach the administrator. Sometimes they also want me to go in and actually negotiate that for them. And again, I'd love to give an example. I spoke about a tea company before. And for them, I actually went to a closed Facebook of mothers. There was probably about 100,000 within this closed Facebook group. And I worked with, it was a cooking themed Facebook group. And we worked with the administrator to create a recipe using their tea. Within 48 hours, they received a month's worth of online orders once that was published. So very, very powerful if it's done in an authentic way that's in keeping with the theme of the group. And that's why I'm saying work with approach the administrator. A lot of them, for a lot of administrators, they've been running their closed Facebook group for a long time. It takes up a lot of energy for them. They don't have an income source coming from it. So they're actually quite open to exploring the idea, but it's new to them. Yeah. But so be aware of that. But I will say that there's great opportunity in there for some small business owners.
Yeah. Look, and I know myself, I have a massive Facebook group that I run for free and it takes up a lot of my time.
Of course, Jen.
I do feel them. But I also, feel again, as a mum, I've got 20, 21, 18 and 17-year-olds. And I go into mums groups, like closed mums Facebook groups, and I don't feel that they are focused towards me. Do you think that's just because I'm just not in there enough looking at it? I feel they're looking for the 7-seater bus.
No, I actually think that there are some really interesting closed Facebook groups for invisible women like myself,
Yeah.
and yourself. One of them that I'm in that's really interesting is around perimenopause, which is, something that's, approaching. So, and that's a highly engaged audience. So I think it depends. Again, we're very, very different. We're diverse. We have different interests. So often a Facebook group is often around an interest as opposed to a group of over 40 or
Yes.
over 40-year-old mothers, etc. And so I would have a look at the interests as well. Yes, I will say there are a lot of those Facebook groups that do just focus in on new mums and mums with young children, but I'm saying that it's worth exploring. There are a lot of other segments that are also catered for.
Beautiful. Katrina, this has been such an amazing conversation. I have written lots of notes that I'm going to ask you about when I stop pressing record, I'm sure. But it's been a great conversation. So interesting, I guess, as a mum to look at the marketing focused towards me, or not, the lack of marketing focus towards me. If anyone is listening and you've also piqued their interest and they would like to chat further, what's the best way someone can get in contact with you?
Oh, look, head over to marketingtomums.com.au and there's a contact form there, or you can email me directly. I'm very approachable, Katrina@marketingtomums.com.au.
Beautiful. And do you hang out on any of the social platforms in particular?
Do I ever? I will say I'm pretty big on LinkedIn, but you will also find me over on Facebook and Instagram, but probably LinkedIn is kind of my key platform.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I'm just there as Katrina McCarter.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will have all those links in the show notes, of course. Katrina, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for giving up your time and chatting to me and my audience. I can't wait for them to hear it and get their wheels turning and looking at their marketing to mums.
Oh, thanks, Jen. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. How good was that? Seriously, how good? So some big takeaways I wanted to repeat for you from my interview with Katrina. Okay, first one, 6.2 million mums are controlling $132 billion every single year. That's a massive market. And like she said, if we were an industry, we would control, what did she say? Something like we would be the biggest contributor of GDP in the Australian economy, which just blows my economic mind. 63% of the mums surveyed, and there was 1,800 people that did responses for her, said that brands and businesses didn't understand them. Like, holy crap on a cracker. Like, seriously, that is a massive stat. And of course, the other tip she gave was get yourself a testimonial strategy. I'm going to have to do a podcast interview or a podcast, podcast episode all about testimonial strategies very shortly. I'm not quite sure if I've already done one. I can't think of one that I've already done, but yes, I will definitely have to get onto that because mums are buying on recommendations of others, even strangers, people they don't know. But if there's a testimonial there that resonates with them, they are buying on that. Again, holy crap on a cracker. Millennials, people aged 23 to 38-year-olds, aren't as Instagram loved up as we thought. They are still very much in bed with Facebook, and which goes perfectly with my podcast episode 120, talking about looking at your insights and your data, because if you go have a look, I bet you can see this for yourself. Facebook, besides organic, is streets ahead of driving traffic to my website. So maybe go and check out yours. Like, Instagram is so far down traffic driving for me to my website. You know, it's really quite astonishing just how much more traffic comes from Facebook. Anyway, just what's that? 4 points I really wanted to hammer home before we finish up. But that's enough for me for one episode. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it and talking to Katrina. I will be back, of course, next Thursday for episode 122, and I really look forward to chatting then. I'd love you to come and join my Facebook group called Like-Minded Business Owners. If you get a chance, come in there and let's have a chat a little bit more about marketing to mums and trends that you might be seeing, both from a business point of view and also a consumer point of view. And for those who are playing at home, you will notice that I have changed my Instagram handle. So I am now at Jen Donovan _ as opposed to I was at Small Business Made Simple. But I've made the change, and, eventually I will be changing my branding all to Jen Donovan. It's a slow process. Anyway, guys, have a fabulous week, whatever or whoever it brings into your life. If you've listened to the podcast so far, I hope you're enjoying it, and I would love for you to hit that subscribe button, and I would really love for you to leave a rating and a review as well, because again, if you can leave me a rating and a review, then that will help me get other mums listening to my podcast as well. And of course, you can share this episode with another business owner doing that daily grind who just wants someone to make their business life simpler or rethink how they're marketing to mums. Anyway, guys, I will see you next week, and remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.